Táto konferencia by nebola, keby nebolo dôležitého človeka v mojom živote, a verím, že nielen v mojom, lebo sú to aj jeho rodičia. Peťa Krajčíka. Je to človek, ktorý je aj mojím partnerom 3 roky. A keď som ho spoznala, sa vrátil z Ameriky po niekoľkých rokoch a stále rozprával o fosílnych palivách, o elektromobilite, o tom, akí sú ľudia hlúpi a čo všetko robia, ako to robia zlé, ako to tak nemá fungovať a prečo tuto na Slovensku sú všetci takí zadúbení, že tomu nerozumejú a strašne negatívni. A začal by ukazovať jeden dokument, ďalší dokument, z toho bolo 10, 20, stovky dokumentov, ktoré som si už potom s veľmi veľkou ochotou pozerala, lebo som tam našla toľko súvislostí, že ako človek, ktorý má prirodzene od rodičov, ďakujem za to, že mám vzťah k prírode, k zvieratám, že si uvedomujem hodnoty aj mimo peňazí a materiálnych vecí, ktoré mám samozrejme tiež rada, ale uvedomujem si aj iné hodnoty v živote, tak som v tejto téme, ktorej sa Peťo venuje, našla neskutočne veľa súvislostí, pozitívnych vecí a hlavne priestor na pomoc, na prácu, na budúcnosť. Takže ja ďakujem naozaj môjmu partnerovi Peťovi Krajčíkovi, bez neho by táto konferencia nevznikla, pretože asi by moje pomáhanie zostalo len v rámci nejakých menej dôležitých vecí, aspoň v poňatí tejto aktivity. A ja ho chcem teraz preto zavolať, aby aj on povedal pár slov k dnešnému dňu a potom, aby samozrejme predstavil pre nás veľmi, veľmi dôležitého človeka v rámci našej konferencie. Ďakujem.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Ja mám, ďakujem ešte raz. Po týchto slovách naozaj sa mi trošičku ťažšie začína. I napriek tomu mám výhodu, že tento priestor nie je teraz pre mňa určený. A je to easy way to get away from this. Ďakujem, Danielke, ešte raz za tieto slová, aj vám ostatným. V podstate veľmi rád by som uviedol jedného človeka teraz na scénu a predstavil. Ja som tohto človeka stretol v Istanbule v roku 2013. Bolo to na konferencii klimatickej reality, alebo The Project, Climate Reality Project. A tento projekt patrí bývalému viceprezidentovi pánovi Al Goreovi, ktorý vznikol na základe jeho filmu An Inconvenient Truth, alebo Nepríjemná pravda, za ktorú bol ocenený Nobelovou cenou za mier, aj spolu s IPCC, medzivládnym panelom pre klimatickú zmenu. A v podstate tento človek, ktorého som ja tam stretol, bol samozrejme aj pán Al Gore, ktorý ma osobne školil a trénoval, certifikoval. A sme tu v podstate iba dvaja na Slovensku. Ale tento človek je jeho pravou rukou, pána Al Gora, a takisto je medzinárodný riaditeľ pre klimatickú realitu, alebo teda The Climate Reality Project. A teda naozaj by som chcel srdečne privítať na scénu pána Mária Molinu. Mario, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
If you can hear me, I won't use the mic too much. Thank you so very much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, Peter. I have both the privilege and the challenge to cover the climate crisis, its impact, science, and solutions in the next 11 minutes. So we have a lot to cover. Let's go ahead and get started. I like to start all presentations with this image. This was taken by the astronauts on the Apollo 17 mission on December 7th of 1972. And it's the first picture in history that actually shows the entire planet. And I think it's a good reminder that if we are to address the climate crisis, we have to answer 3 questions. First, must we change? Second, can we change? And third, will we change? To talk about the first question, must we change? Is this important enough that we have to make a change? It's helpful to think about the Earth's atmosphere. This picture was taken from the International Space Station, and it shows that unlike our impression of the sky when we stand outside and look and it seems endless, the Earth's atmosphere is actually a very thin layer, about the equivalent of an apple peel around an apple or a coat of varnish around a soccer ball. And some humans, including the President of the United States, think that you can throw as much pollution into this thin atmosphere and not have an impact on the composition of the atmosphere. But the science is clear. When we burn fossil fuels, when we burn forests, when we cut down forests, we are contaminating our air and warming the planet. A very brief introduction. All of you are familiar with the greenhouse gas effect, but this slide shows how solar radiation comes into the atmosphere. Some of it is absorbed by the Earth's surface, Most of it, about 50%, is reflected back. The rest of it stays, and it helps keep the planet warm. That's a good thing. It keeps us from freezing to death. But the problem is that the more greenhouse gases that there are, the thicker the atmosphere, the more heat that is trapped. Where is all of this heat going? Well, first of all, over the last 60 years, carbon dioxide emissions have increased by 40%. Most of it in the last 6 decades since World War II. 16 of the hottest years on record have taken place during this century. And 2016 was the 3rd consecutive year with the highest average surface temperature in recorded history. Where is all this heat going? Well, some of it we're experiencing in the form of heat waves. However, 90% of it since 1970 has actually gone into the oceans. It's being stored, most of it under 700 meters. However, a lot of it is coming to the surface now. It's warming up the surface of the oceans, and we're starting to see more intense storms, as well as phenomena that we had never seen before, such as the formation of 3 Class 4 hurricanes over the Pacific in 2015, something that had never happened before.
Mario, sorry, I just want to jump in. Prosím vás, 2 je slovenčina, 3 je angličtina. Snad som to nepoplietol na tých prekladacích zariadeniach, dobre? Ďakujem.
What he said.
Takže presne naopak. Takže...
Okay, great. Then, so all of us are familiar with the hydrologic cycle, but it's critically important in the mechanics of climate change. Because as we have more evaporation, there's more water vapor in the air. All of that water vapor has to come down somewhere. And it's right now coming down mostly over land surfaces in the form of really intense storms. It used to be that scientists said, we can't actually say that any particular extreme weather event or storm is tied to global warming. We now know that that is not true. We now know that the entire system has changed. So every single extreme weather event is actually affected by the environment in which it's taking place, and that environment is getting warmer. We see this with extreme consequences, superstorm cells that are forming over the plains, and obviously in Europe we've seen it in the form of flooding. You experienced it here in Slovakia in the form of the floods, and in 2013 across Eastern Europe, as well as in 2014 across the massive floods that affected most of Eastern Europe. Now, that same heat, the extra heat that's evaporating water from the oceans, is also evaporating water from the soil, causing extreme droughts. The droughts that we are experiencing in this century are unprecedented. And they're having deep geopolitical consequences around the world, but also for Europe. And let me make a quick connection between something else that has been in the news and climate change. So climate change has fueled the drought that between 26 and 2010 dried up 60% of Syria's arable land, fertile lands, and killed 70% of its livestock. What this caused is it caused about 1.5 million refugees to flee into the cities and caused a political crisis within Syria that we were already warned in 2008 the government did not have the capacity to deal with. It was too much, and we all know what has happened since 2008 until now. Basically, the single most dire humanitarian crisis in the world is taking place, driving hundreds of thousands of refugees, and has had deep political impacts across the European continent and around the world. If these kinds of events continue to happen, we won't be dealing with hundreds of thousands. We'll be dealing with millions of people that are trying to escape drought areas. In addition to that, worldwide extreme weather catastrophes. Only in 2015, there were 1,000 documented extreme weather catastrophes, totaling about $90 billion in cost. Only 27 billion of those were actually insured. So there's a whole risk as well to assets around the world. In addition to this, we have declining mass not only in the Greenland ice sheet, but across the polar ice caps. We've seen a steepest decline that we had seen since records began. And those ice caps are melting into the ocean, causing sea level rise and threatening trillions of dollars in assets around the world. So we're missing the axes here, but this is about $3.4 trillion worth of assets. So this could be a shock to the global economy at a scale that the 2008 recession would make it seem like a blip in the economy. This is not only environmentalists speaking, insurance companies are concerned about it. Basically, the economics of our entire civilization are at stake. We are already paying the cost of carbon. In all of these forms, we're paying for the economic costs. So when people say it's too expensive to take action on climate change, they're wrong. We're already paying, and it's already too expensive because we are not taking action. We're not taking enough action. So to answer that first question, must we change? The answer is a resounding yes, of course. We have to change for a variety of reasons. But another question is, can we change? Do we have the tools at hand to actually transform the global energy economy, global energy and land use economy? Well, the fact is that we do. So in 2000, the International Energy Agency made a projection that world capacity would reach 30 gigawatts by 2010. The reality is that by 2010, we had already exceeded that capacity 16 times over. And currently, we have almost 300,000 gigawatts of solar capacity installed around the world. Why? How has this happened so quickly? Well, sorry, this is wind capacity, and we have 300,000 gigawatts of wind capacity. Globally, wind could supply worldwide electricity consumption 40 times over what our current needs, especially offshore wind. The costs are dropping dramatically, and the technology is improving incredibly. Solar energy. Now back to solar energy. The solar energy market will grow by 1 gigawatt per year by 2010, was the 2002 International Energy Agency's projection. The reality of it is that we exceeded that 17 times over. At the end of 2016, we had 73 gigawatts of installed solar capacity around the world, and we're expected to install another 6 gigawatts in 2017. That is an exponential growth curve for this type of technology. World solar PV has exploded to almost 300 gigawatts. The reason being that generating electricity from solar power is now cheaper than or equal to fossil fuel generated electricity in most of the world. And wind power electricity is the same way. There are right now 26 countries with more than a gigawatt of wind energy installed, and 8 countries with more than 10 gigawatts of wind energy installed. There's enough solar energy that reaches the Earth every day, every 24 hours, to fill all of the world's energy needs for an entire year. This is free energy. So, in addition, some of you might have heard of the intermittency problem. Well, what happens when the wind isn't blowing? What happens when the sun isn't shining? Advances in the cost and technology and innovations in battery-powered and storage technology have driven the cost of energy of storage down at the same rate that some of the other technologies like wind and solar have been growing. It is estimated that basically most business analysts agree that the combination of solar and wind plus batteries and plus storage can actually shift the entire utilities model for the energy markets around the world, both at the utility scale and the residential scale. The Tesla Powerwall can actually power up to 97 kilowatt hours in its new model, and there's a mega factory right now being built that will drive the costs even further down. Again, Barclays agrees with the same analysis. Innovations in battery storage and technology are actually also driving innovations in vehicle and electromobility transportation. Basically, a fleet of cars can actually be a mobile storage unit for a city. And right now, most of the large manufacturers in the world either have electric vehicles in the market or are getting ready to get electric vehicle models into production and get them to market within the next year or two. So, to answer that second question, can we change? Yes, we have the technology. Human innovation is at its peak. But the real challenge is the will to change. Will we change? Well, as it's been discussed, and the Deputy Minister mentioned it before, thank you for noting the difference between the federal government and the states. In 2015, the Paris Agreement, 195 countries around the world agreed to limit emissions in order to peak global average warming at 2 degrees Celsius or less. However, despite the very small vision of the current President of the United States and the announcement that happened this week, we actually believe that we can still meet that goal. How and why? We can get into it later during one of the panel discussions, but basically, underneath, we believe that the economics are driving the market in such a direction that any federal policy that is implemented in the United States right now is actually trying to swim upstream against the market. What this graph shows is basically the increase in investment in renewables versus investment in fossil fuels worldwide up to 2014. And we can only expect for that level of investment to continue. Even in the United States, there are no new coal-fired power plants being built. So this idea that we're going to bring coal back is a straight outright lie. And we have the political will. Thank you to basically all of the European nations for assuming leadership. We are going to need European leadership over the course of the next 4 years and an increase in ambitions to the European NDC in order to keep other nations on board as well as keep driving emissions down. And who would have told us 5 years ago that it was actually going to be China that helped lead the world in the direction of clean energy? So what we need for everyone here to join us using their voices, their choices, and their votes when initiatives come up before the European Commission in the next 4 years, especially around the Europe 2030 package, 2030 energy package. Join us using voices, their choices, to fight the climate crisis. Use your voices, your choices, your votes to speak truth to power, because over the next few years, we have to fight like our world depends on it. Because as a matter of fact, it does. Thank you.
Stay for some questions. Takže poprosím, ak by boli nejaké teraz otázočky na pána Molinu a na projekt klimatickej reality, čokoľvek. Máte teraz priestor, máme asi zhruba 5 minútiek alebo 4. Nech sa páči. Okay,
Go ahead.
Všetci sme ready?
Mario, there were a lot of inspiring thoughts in those 11 minutes, but my first question is when you show the picture of Donald Trump, a very cartoon-looking picture, do you believe that this might serve as a common enemy? Let's not say enemy, but maybe that could unite all those initiatives even better, because I think it did that on internet yesterday. I saw the Arnold Schwarzenegger reaction to Donald Trump, so I would like to hear some thoughts on that. Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Which initiatives?
All the initiatives that you perceive as uniting initiatives.
Okay. Yeah, so not to get too deeply into US politics right now, but what we are seeing is we're actually seeing a building of coalition across issues and sectors that hasn't happened before. Social justice movement, environmental issues, climate change, energy, a lot of businesses are coming together. So there is definitely an upswelling in the US of civil society against some of these policies, against a lot of these policies. But as was properly mentioned, it's important to remember that a lot of progress within the US can actually be made at the state and city level, because the states have a lot of independence in terms of setting their own energy and emissions targets. So I do think that we are going to see a unification of common policies. We have in the northeastern United States the RGGI, so it's basically a regional cap and trade market in the northeast. California and Canada are working together on a cap and trade market across western states and Quebec and the Quebec and Ontario regions. So we will not see action from the federal government, but that doesn't mean that all hope is lost in terms of progress.
Dobre, môže byť priestor na ďalšiu otázočku. Nech sa páči.
Thank you very much for the nice presentation. I would like to ask about the middle part. You asked if we can change. And you used the example of progress in technology, like low carbon electricity, electromobiles, and so on. And my question is if this assumes or includes the change in human behavior, or is it just about changing the technology we use? Thank you.
Fantastic question. It's hard to cover all of the needed movements in 11 minutes, but basically changes in human behavior, if you saw the last slide, the choices that we make are equally important. We got Paris not because all of a sudden world leaders woke up and said, I think it's time to sign an agreement on climate change. We got Paris because us, the people in every single country, told them that that was a priority at the time. And so I think that changes in awareness and changes in human behavior, but also changes in consumption. What choices do we make? We also vote with our euros, with our dollars, with what we decide to buy or not buy.
Nech sa páči. Pán Kurila, dávam mikrofón, sekundu.
Thank you, very inspiring. Very quickly on the political, let's say, angle. What is needed at the policy action now? We saw a very massive, let's say, rejection and opposition towards, the step that federal government took yesterday. But what's needed at the next level? There is a G20 coming, where I think German presidency will be very tough on American partners. But what is the next stage for political, let's say, people to take actions, and how we can do something more apart from disagreeing with the approach?
Thank you. And I'm assuming that you are talking about the international community, politically international community. Yeah. Withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, we think, was a short-sighted but also diplomatically foolish move on part of the United States, not only for the environmental consequences, but for the diplomatic consequences. So under World Trade Organization rules, a country that is interacting in commerce with a bloc or a country that actually has a particular tariff, so like a carbon tax, has the right to impose the same types of tariffs if they don't exist in the country. So I think that there's a lot of financial pressure and there's a lot of diplomatic pressure. This administration has said over and over again how they actually need global cooperation on a number of issues, especially security. So I think it'll be time to pressure the United States in ways that go outside of the environment and climate, through both economically, politically, and diplomatically, to, if not meet the Paris Agreement or the Paris Commitment as it was written, to actually take some sort of climate action as a collateral for other issues.
Okay, we still got 1 more minute. I'm gonna steal this time for myself.
Yeah, go for it.
For a question to you.
Go for it.
I'm gonna stake you in the bag right now a little. What are Mr. Al Gore's plans to fight these decisions that was made lately? And what are his sort of ways to really tackle this crazy battle that's ahead of us right now?
That's a great question. So, Vice President Gore, as some of you might know, cares a little bit about this issue. And he has dedicated his life and will continue to dedicate, I think, every minute of his life to finding solutions. There are 2 approaches, really, that Mr. Gore can take. Right now, within the administration, domestically, he has actually had conversations with Donald Trump, trying to explain to him the importance and the economics of climate change. So he will always continue to be available for proper good advice. However, what he has encouraged us to do is to move the fight to the municipal and state levels, and to actually work with state leaders. And he has met and endorsed and worked with a lot of state leaders and mayors who are adopting climate change initiatives. So that's basically what's going to happen domestically. And I think that a lot of his work overseas, and he was just on an overseas trip last week, is going to be to work with international leaders who might be on the fence, to not withdraw or not lower their ambitions because of the United States decision. So he worked very closely with the Indian government in 2015 in advance of the Paris Agreement, and was influential in actually getting them to submit an NDC and commit to the ratification. We expect that we will be working with them, or he will be working with them very closely, especially with their finance ministry, around the economics of solar, particularly. And then, obviously, he met with a former president, Mega, in Indonesia around deforestation issues. So what we very much see his role as being is being the voice of unofficial diplomacy on climate change over the next few years.
Maybe one more thing. What about China and Mr. Al Gore's influence? Anything over there?
Yeah, he's had several meetings with ministries in China. We opened up a climate reality branch office in China last year. And really, what we believe the game in China is to work with the business community, and basically getting the business community to decarbonize their supply chain, to decarbonize their production units. And the government is very much on board. As some of you might know, there are 5 pilot carbon cap and trade programs throughout China, and it's very likely that they'll actually adopt a cap and trade program in the next couple of years. So while China continues to be an incredibly large emitter just by the scale of production in the country, the direction that it's headed in and the initiatives that they are supporting both domestically and internationally are in the right direction. So like I said, a little while ago, who would have told us 6 years ago that it would be China that was leading the world on climate change?
Thank you so much for all the answers. We have to really continue with the program right now. We'll get into details later. All
Yeah,
right?
fantastic. Thank you very much.
You. Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Dámy a páni, dovolte ešte takú maličkosť, motivácia je celkom silná vec a my máme tu česť od nášho ďalšieho partnera Volkswagen Slovakia motivovať vás malým darčekom, ktorý vďaka ním máme, takže všetkým tým, ktorí sa pýtali otázky, tak s veľkým potešením môžeme dať aspoň maličkú motiváciu od nášho partnera. Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Thank you, Mario, for your support. It was perfect. Thank you very much.